Bang, bang. What's going on, guys? Hope you guys are really excited about this interview. I really enjoyed it. I think you will as well. But before we get into that, make sure that you like this video so that more people on YouTube can find it. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And don't forget that BlockFi is the sponsor today. They've got 3 products you can buy and sell crypto on their crypto exchange. You can deposit crypto and earn up to 8.6% APY in an interest-bearing account, or you can deposit crypto and take out a US dollar loan against your crypto collateral. You can use the description right here, or you can go to blockfi.com/pomp to learn more. All right, let's get into this episode. I hope you guys enjoy this one. All right, guys, bang, bang. I've got Chad here with me. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So you were the technical lead for Thorchain. Let's just jump right in. What is the problem that Thorchain is trying to solve?
I think the problem that Thorchain is trying to solve is that it's kind of funny. This ecosystem has built this decentralized idea of not requiring any centralized entity to be able to conduct, but yet we require a centralized entity to conduct ourselves from Bitcoin to Ethereum, or Ethereum to Bitcoin Cash, or whatever it might be. We go through some centralized entity, whether it be Binance or Kraken or Coinbase or whatever. But it'd be much better, I think, from almost every perspective, if we can move through one chain to another chain without being censored, without being KYC, without being asking for permission. In fact, when you want to say you want to send some Bitcoin and transfer it into Ethereum on the other side, the only actual requirement of Thorchain is that you can make a Bitcoin signature. That's literally the only thing. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to download this thing. You don't have to sign up for this thing. You don't have to do anything else. Just, can you make a Bitcoin signature? You can. You got it.
So when you think through kind of both problems, right? Because I think one of this is a centralized entity, meaning the platforms. And then the second thing is what I'll just call kind of a common unit of account, right? So you're selling Bitcoin to go to a stablecoin, and then you're buying Ethereum as an example. Let's start with the centralized entity. What are the big problems there as to why people should not want to or should be looking for decentralized solutions?
That's a great question. And I don't even know where to start because there's so many places I could talk about, to be honest. So you could talk about the whole black box element to it, not really knowing how much they have, how much are they actually solvent? Are they not solvent? You could talk about the complexities of it takes weeks to sign up for one of these things, which is ludicrous. My father-in-law just signed up for one of these services. I'm not gonna name which one. And he bought some Ethereum and said, like, oh, you can't take this off the system, off the network for 9 days. He was just like, wait, well, why can't I get my own Ethereum? I just bought it. Why can't I take it off to my wallet? And it's just like, wait, what is this? What are we doing here? This makes no sense whatsoever. Not to mention the exchange has been hacked more than one time, let's say. It's been a calamity almost from the beginning, starting from Mt. Gox, and we're still reliant on these systems. And I don't think anybody just like loves them in a sense. Everybody's like, we use them because it's the thing we have to use now. But like, I think we all are looking for a system that's more instantaneous, that's more readily available, you can just use it right out of your wallet if you want to use it. It's just that simple.
Yeah. And so then when you think about the unit of account, right, that idea that you've got to go from Bitcoin into a stable coin, as an example, before you buy another asset, what's the issue there? Is it just an efficiency thing? Is there a cost element to it? How do you think about that?
Well, it's not just, efficiency is one part of it, right? It takes more time. If you want to swap from Bitcoin to Ethereum, it actually takes more time to do that on some centralized exchange than it would on Thorchain, for example. But like, the problem is that you're giving somebody else your Bitcoin, which is theirs at that point, and they're giving you like an IOU that you're kind of holding on to because you want to hold on to their IOU for whatever reason. And then you're going through a process in their UI to swap from that to this, paying fees along the way, and then at some point in the future, requesting your Ethereum out, whatever that might be. That's just not a system that makes sense in the greater scheme of like how crypto works or how crypto was born out of. It's like, I want 100% accountability. I want to be able to 100% verify that everything is legitimate, everything's like real. And that's true with Thorchain. You can actually look at the wallets, know exactly how much money it has, how much it claims to have, and you'll see they're always the same. Like, that's a really important concept that we just don't have in a cross-chain perspective. We have it within like, DEXs within Ethereum, like that worked extremely well, right? It was a great platforms, but we're missing that core component of like, let's move Bitcoin to Ethereum, to Litecoin, to Binance, to whatever else. There's no it's complete neutrality. The network doesn't really care is completely agnostic about what chain or asset you're talking about. It's just, we're going to treat everybody identically the same.
For sure. When somebody asks you, what is Thorchain? How do you describe it?
Well, the most like simple and succinct way of describing Thorchain is that it's like a cross-chain Uniswap, right? That's like the simplest way you can put it. That's kind of an oversimplification in many respects. In a larger sense, I see it as the highways between blockchains, right? Because every blockchain today is a completely separated island onto itself and has very little relationship or connection to any other blockchain in the world for the most part. And so Thorchain is creating decentralized highways that you can move from blockchain A to blockchain B, and it can theoretically connect with any blockchain. Not only any blockchain, but any layer 1 or layer 2 solution theoretically. You can do pretty much anything you want with it.
And so when you talk about these highways, really what's happening here is it allows you for the ability to swap directly Bitcoin for Ethereum, right? So one, you don't have to use a centralized entity in terms of those exchanges we talked about, but also two is I don't have to sell an asset into that common unit of account. I can literally do an asset swap between these various blockchains. And so
Correct.
How does that technically work? Like, what are you guys doing under the hood to make this possible?
Yeah, sure. So effectively, the Thorchain network has a whole host of different Bitcoin wallets that it kind of manages, if you want to call it that. And so whenever you send in a Bitcoin transaction into our Bitcoin wallet that's managed by the network, all the different validators have their own copy of the Bitcoin full node they're running individually. And they're all looking at the Bitcoin blockchain. They're all saying, okay, I saw Pomp send 1 Bitcoin into our Asgard vault address on the Thorchain network, and this is how much it was, and this is all the details. And then once a super majority of the nodes kind of all agree upon each other, like, oh, we all saw the same thing. Pomp sent 1 Bitcoin into us, and he sent an op return or like a memo with an intention of like, I want to swap Bitcoin for Ethereum or for USDT or for whatever else. And so that they all kind of make the consensus that transaction actually occurred. And then the network says, okay, Pomp sent us 1 Bitcoin. He wants to get some Ethereum out. We do a calculation of how much Ethereum that would be on the continuous liquidity pools of the network. And then it sends out that Ethereum to whatever ETH address that you requested it on, OX something, right?
And so is this all being built by a single team? Is this a distributed thing where there's just a bunch of kind of teams working on open source software? Like how exactly was this originally built? And then how are you guys pushing forward, and kind of continue to improve or innovate around this?
Yeah, I mean, it started with an initial team for sure. It's a very small team. I think it's only like 9-ish people, 10-ish people on it for that matter. But it's very quickly grew much beyond that. And so there's actually like well over a dozen different teams building different aspects of the ecosystem. In fact, like more of the treasury that the team has is being spent to fund other projects and other groups of people to build block explorers and to build dashboards and UIs and data science and now analytics about this, that, and the other thing, whatever it might be. So the vast majority of the funds are actually going out to other people or other teams other than the team that they originated it from.
And so when you think about why this is better, we talked a little bit about the lack of centralization. We talked a little bit about the lack of need for that common unit of account. What else is better about this, right? Is this something that it's such a superior product that everyone's going to go and adopt it? Is this going to coexist with existing models? Just talk a little bit about how you see the advantages of Thorchain with some of the other players in the space.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big things here that is quite innovative is that the Thorchain network allows people to earn yield on whatever assets they hold, right? So you can earn yield, you can supply Bitcoin to the network, just Bitcoin by itself, supply Bitcoin to the network. And then you can earn yield on that Bitcoin and then come back later and pull out more Bitcoin than you put in the system.
How does that work?
Well, it's effectively when you put just Bitcoin into, let's say, the Bitcoin pool on Thorchain, every time somebody swaps in and out of Bitcoin, going one direction or the other, a little bit of the fee is kind of left behind in the pool. And you're effectively buying a percentage of that pool when you put your Bitcoin into it. It's like, oh, I'm going to take on, since 10% of the pool is my Bitcoin, so to speak, I own 10% of the pool. So whenever there's a swap of like $100 fee came through, which just say for random number, 10% of the $100 is mine, and I made $10 in value from that. And in my case, it'd be in Bitcoin. And so you can actually like put in a bunch of Bitcoin and then come back later and have more Bitcoin than you had before. And that's just not just Bitcoin. That can be Ethereum, that can be Litecoin, that can be Tether, Ripple. I mean, whatever it is, your kind of cup of tea, it doesn't really matter. And that's a first in this industry.
And what is the average yield right now across those assets? Are we talking about like 1 or 2%, or are we talking about like 50%?
It's certainly closer to the 50%. You can look at the data. It's freely available. Anybody can check it and verify. You're welcome to. It ranges from some assets. Some pools are much higher. Like I've seen some that are like 100 and something, 20% or something like this. That's not typical, but it can happen. But the majority of them are going to be around 30, 40, maybe 50%.
Got it. And I'm assuming that that's a function of how much is in the pool and then how popular the swaps are, right? So if you have very few people who have contributed to a pool and it's a very popular kind of asset to swap in and out of, then obviously that would lead to a higher, kind of yield. And then the idea would be that's an incentive for more and more people to join that pool, provide more liquidity, and therefore that return then gets commoditized down over time.
Right. Even the amount of fee that you pay when you make a swap through a Thorchain pool is actually based upon the depth of the pool and the size of your trade. So if you're doing like, if the pool's like, 100 units and you're doing a 50 unit trade, so to speak, that was like a massive, you're going to pay a huge slip fee in that scenario. But so for smaller cap pools, you're going to have a lower depth to it. So people are going to pay more on the swaps, and they do that. We already see that happening over the last 10 months of economic activity. People are willing to pay higher amounts of fees for, this smaller cap pool. It's how the economics are actually functioning today. But for pools like, the Bitcoin pool or the Ethereum pool, which is going to be a lot deeper, the fees that people will pay will be far less than you would see on, like, say, like a Uniswap.
Yeah. And when you think of Uniswap as kind of the market leader, let's say for decentralized exchanges, do you view them as just kind of another player in the crypto ecosystem? Do you view them as, quote unquote, competition? Are people making a direct choice between, do I go and actually trade this asset on Uniswap versus use Thorchain? Just how do you see the relationship there?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we're all fans of Uniswap. They really do some really great stuff over there for sure. I don't see them as direct competition per se. For one, I see Thorchain as being more of a short tail asset than a long tail asset, meaning that you're not going to have every asset across the entire crypto space on Thorchain. You're going to have the most economically significant ones. And if you want some sort of small cap, illiquid edge coin, you can probably do that on Uniswap or SushiSwap or one of these guys. The difference is that Thorchain, whenever it manages a new asset, it has additional cost to the network. Whereas with Uniswap, it doesn't have significantly more cost to the network. So they can have as many assets as they want on that smart contract, and it scales just fine. Whereas Thorchain has more and more cost for every asset that you add. You have to sign transactions and all these things that just kind of increase the amount of load on the network from that. So you're not going to see a bazillion assets on Thorchain, but even with the 5 chains that are currently supported now, it's already supporting 92% of the entire, cryptocurrency, industry, right? So it's already, even right now, the multi-chain chaos that we launched a week ago, already has more access to more funds than like Uniswap or SushiSwap, because you have like Bitcoin, which is like the biggest, most important thing that like has to be supported, but it has been largely forgotten and just like left out for whatever reasons. And this is the first time like Bitcoin's being like brought into the fold of like, okay, Bitcoiners, you actually have access to real DeFi with layer 1 real Bitcoin, no pegged assets, no wrap, any of this stuff, like legitimately layer 1 Bitcoin.
Yeah. When you think about the recent ShapeShift announcement, that was really fascinating to me. So Eric Voorhees, it sounds like they decided to take the Thorchain kind of technology and infrastructure, and that's now what is powering their exchange. So in effect, what they've done is they've basically put a front end on top of Thorchain, and that's where their users are going and using that. One, Is that correct? And then 2, talk a little bit about kind of the importance of somebody like ShapeShift adopting this.
Yeah, sure. ShapeShift is like one of the oldest and most respected, cross-chain, swaps, like in the industry. At least in my opinion, that's true. And they've done an excellent job over the last, few years. And their original vision was to be able to facilitate trades or swaps without requiring KYC. And unfortunately, that didn't work out so well because the technology wasn't there at the time, and they got pressure from regulators to start doing KYC and all these things. We know the story. And so when Thorchain came around and effectively was kind of fulfilling the original vision of ShapeShift, they saw that and they were like, oh, this is something we have to get on board with. And so now they have the ability to be able to swap between chains without requiring KYC at all. And if they wanted to, they're not doing this yet, but they might do it in the future. They can actually have Thorchain charge a fee on their behalf back to them if they want to, using affiliate fees. So you can actually create wallets that have interface with Thorchain to do some swaps, whatever. And you can actually, the wallet manufacturers can make money by integrating with Thorchain by using affiliate fees, 1 basis point or 10 basis points or whatever the wallet wants to charge per swap.
Yeah. What's really fascinating is basically because you've built that piece of infrastructure, you now can have these front ends plug into the system, right?
Yep.
And those front ends have a way to monetize, but also they're essentially bringing you customers. So doing customer acquisition, they're bringing you liquidity.
Yep.
And so it's a really fascinating model. And ultimately it goes back to this thesis of open systems are going to beat the closed systems, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Naturally, you guys have built this open system that anyone can plug into.
Yeah. It's an open protocol, right? No one controls the gates. They're wide open for anybody who wants to use them. If ShapeShift wants to integrate with them, more power to them. If Trust Wallet or Exodus or Coinbase, if they want to integrate, hey, go at it. It's a freely available network for anybody to utilize however they see fit. That's how it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked a little bit about various ways people can participate. So they can go ahead and they can swap assets using Thorchain. They can provide assets to the liquidity pools. Another element is they can basically provide a node. And I think that you guys have a very unique kind of mechanism around the nodes, and they can be swapped out with each other. And
Yep.
Just talk a little bit about what that means for somebody to participate as a node, and then how that entire system works.
Yeah. So in order to participate with the node, there's a capitalistic kind of race, so to speak, to who gets added into the system. So you can walk up and say, hey, I'm ready to become a node, and then the network will say, okay, we see you there. But every time it churns, which happens every 3 days or so, the network will say, all right, who are the most valuable people to churn in relative to the highest bond, right? So right now on single chain ChaosNet, that's about $13 million in Rune that you have to have in order to become a validator on the network. Not because that we as a team had said, that's just literally what the capitalistic markets dictate, that you make so much revenue running a node that it's worthwhile to spend $13 million buying enough Rune to run one. That's literally what the capitalistic markets dictate. And so the network is designed that every 3 days it churns, and some people get kicked out and some people get pulled in. And that's to ensure that everybody gets kicked out at some point in time. There's a continuous churn happening, and there's nobody that stays in there forever. Over time, every time the network churns, all the funds need to be migrated, because every time the network churns, new threshold signature vaults are created, and the old ones are being retired. So all the Bitcoin and all the Binance and all the assets have to be migrated programmatically to the new vault, and that happens just every 3 days. And it proves that the network actually has access to all these funds, right? If nobody's signing transactions, maybe you lost the keys. Right? We've seen this where certain exchanges, the head honcho got arrested, and then all the funds were locked up, and you're like, well, I guess you have it, but you can't sign anything. So do you really have it? You know what I mean? And so Thorchain proves that every 3 days by moving every coin, every Satoshi, every asset across to a new vault every 3 days, just to prove that it has access to every single asset that it holds.
I love it. You mentioned Rune, which is the token within the Thorchain system. Describe why you need that.
Yeah, you actually require Rune. It's counterintuitive to some degree, but I'll explain why. If you would use something that wasn't Rune, let's say use Bitcoin as the base asset of the network, which from a technological perspective is a little bit impractical due to slow block times, but it is feasible. It is possible. But the problem with that is if you secure the assets with an external asset like Bitcoin or Ethereum or Tether or whatever, the economic incentives are incorrect in the network, and that somebody will attack the network and steal all the funds and make a huge amount of profit. right? So say like we'll kind of game theory this out. Say there's like $75 million of bond that the validators are running with, and then the pools have about $30 million of assets, right? And say we're doing Bitcoin first. So it's like $75 million of Bitcoin, and then $15 million of Bitcoin and $15 million of other various assets. So because every pool is comprised of Bitcoin and something else in this scenario. So if I were to get enough Bitcoin to cyber attack the network and get like a super majority, so say I bought $50 million worth of Bitcoin to attack this side of it out of the 75 million that are used, I can go ahead and take ownership of everything and have complete access to everything and do whatever the hell I want because I have a super majority of nodes, right? I can do what the hell I want to do. So I can go ahead and steal the 75 million, including the 50 million that I put in the beginning, plus the 30 million over here. So that's $105 million. So I spent $50 million to steal $105 million worth of assets. I'm great. I'm on cloud nine. I just doubled my money. I scanned the hell out of this network. I saw all the money. I'm like, great, right? But if it was Rune, it's very different. It's actually a very different behavior. So if it's $75 million of the Rune and then $15 million of Rune here and then $15 million of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and various other assets, and say I spent $50 million of Rune to cyber attack the network. So in the end, I have the 75 million Rune here, the 15 million Rune, that's about $90 million. And then I have $15 million of various assets. But that $90 million I spent that I have of Rune is worth nothing because the value of Rune is derived from the value of the network. And if the network's hacked and all the funds are gone, who the hell is going to want to buy Rune? Nobody. It destroys the capitalistic system of that token instantaneously. So I spent $50 million to get $90 million of Rune, that all that goes to zero, and I actually walk away with all the Bitcoin and Ethereum and everything else, which is worth $15 million. So great, I spent $50 million to steal $15 million. I just lost $35 million in that transaction. You literally cannot secure these assets with another asset like Bitcoin. As great as Bitcoin is, I'm not even shitting on Bitcoin right now. Bitcoin's amazing, but you cannot use it for this application purpose. You have to have a token that is its value is solely derived from the value of the network itself.
And do token holders get a percentage of those transaction fees in the liquidity pool as well? Or does all of those transaction fees go into the liquidity pool and for whoever's participating?
That's actually a really great question. So anytime the system makes income, right? Either that's block rewards, either that's LP, swapping, all this kind of thing. Downstream, we're talking about lending and borrowing to increase revenue for the network. But anytime that happens, that is considered to be a system income. And that gets divvied up between the liquidity providers and the node operators in a way relative to the difference between the Bitcoin, the Rune on one side and the Rune on the other. The network has what's called an incentive pendulum to say that, okay, if it's even what it's supposed to be, which is 2/3 on the node side and 1/3 on the pool side, they'll get a 50-50 split between the two of them. But if the bond gets too high and it gets over bonded, then the bonders make less money and more money goes to the liquidity providers on this side. So that incentivizes people to pump more money on this side or take money out of this side and move it to this side to go back to that kind of equilateral pendulum swing of the middle to ensure that. So everybody profits from the system no matter what role you're taking into it, and it ensures everybody profits in an equal way relative to the economics of the situation at that moment.
And is it possible for somebody to own Rune without participating in the liquidity pool or being a node operator?
Correct. Yeah, you can hodl it in your wallet if you really want to. More power to you. I think most people aren't going to do that because you can just turn it into instead of just being dead capital that's sitting in a wallet, not really doing much for you. Why not make it work for you and actually generate a yield from that? If you want to do that, have at it. Go nuts. If you don't, hold in your wallet. That's fine too. It's up to you.
Yeah. What's been the biggest surprise for you working on this?
Oh, the biggest surprise. It just felt like this thing blew up so fast, so quick. When I first started working on the project in mid 2019 and committing the first lines of code and everything, we even at that time we knew that this was something interesting, something special, but you just can't fathom how far it will go. It's just almost ridiculous. I remember we were just joking around like, imagine if Rune hit like 10 cents, like, would that be like insane? And now it's at like $15 or whatever the hell the price is right now. Like, it was just like, it was to see it kind of go from that kind of initial vision that the team had and then grow into this like gargantuan thing that actually launched and actually supports cross-chain swaps just in a way that's permissionless and censorship resistant. Is absolutely remarkable. I could not have, I can't get over it.
I love it. What's the impact on decentralized finance, regardless of where it happens, Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever, when you have this kind of cross-chain swap? Does that just provide a foundation for more, faster, and kind of better innovation and adoption? Or how do you think about that?
Yeah, I like up until this point, Ethereum has been kind of a DeFi king, right? Like that's pretty inarguable in a sense. And that's largely because Ethereum's programming language was much more flexible and powerful than Bitcoin. Bitcoin's was like very kind of weak, not much you can really do with it for the most part. And then Ethereum came along and said, hey, you can do some really, you have a turning complete language called Solidity, and you can do all these kind of interesting things, which is great. But once you have something like a Thorchain that's written on top of the Cosmos network, you have a much more powerful and much more flexible system that you can build and construct. You literally cannot build Thorchain like on top of the Ethereum system. It just like fundamentally just won't even come out the door, right?
Why not?
And so, well, because you need the security of your own network to secure external assets. You can't rely on Ethereum security to secure an unknown amount of assets on Bitcoin and Litecoin and all these other things. You need validator nodes, your own validator nodes that are incentivized to be observing transactions on Bitcoin and Ethereum and all these other blockchains in order to make that viable or possible. Furthermore, like even an Ethereum transaction, its cost is like goes up remarkably high the more complicated a computation is or the more data intensive it is. And that's not going to be economically feasible on Ethereum. You have to do it on your own kind of native sovereign chain, which is what Thorchain is. I think that Ethereum will still have a place in the future, but any DeFi application that wants to be worth its salt will have to support the entirety of the crypto sphere, not just the Ethereum people or these people over here, but just say, you can walk up with your Bitcoin, with your this, with your that, or whatever, and you get treated with the same exact access as anybody else. So Thorchain has access to like over $2 trillion worth of liquidity around like the crypto sphere. And, Uniswap has access to like, I think it's like $450 billion if you do all the ERC20s and Ethereum together. That's like, a sliver relative to what Thorchain has access to. So the liquidity will end up being on a chain like Thorchain for sure, because that's where you can actually swap from one place to another in a way that actually makes like real sense.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Before I let you go, I've got 3 questions that I ask everyone, and then you'll get to ask me one to finish up. First is, what is the most important book that you've ever read?
Most important book I ever read is it's a boring thing. It's a coding book, but I'm not going to say it because that's going to be too boring for people. I think a more fun answer is Neil deGrasse Tyson wrote a book called Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. It's a great book. It really gives you a great understanding of astrophysics if you're interested in the topic like I am.
Second question comes from our friends over at 8 Sleep. I used to sleep like 5 or 6 hours, and then I got this thermoregulated bed. Basically, I make it super cold and sleep like a baby now and have become a full convert to the sleep religion. What's your sleep schedule like? Do you sleep a lot, and how has that changed over time?
Well, we just launched multi-chain a week ago, so it's not quite like well rested, I'll say that. And also not to mention, my wife is about to give birth in like a week, literally. So I'm sure my sleep is going to be even worse, in the coming few months after my baby girl gets here. That's going to be, a venture onto its own for sure.
Those are 2 acceptable answers as to why to not get some sleep.
Yeah.
Last question for you, and then you get to ask me one: is aliens? Are you a believer or a non-believer?
Oh, well, definitely a believer for sure. I mean, if you think about it, like, what are the most common elements in the universe? The most like plentiful elements. It's helium, in this order: helium, hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and nitrogen. Those are the most common in that order, most common elements in the universe. what are the most common elements in the human body, right? Or this life itself? Well, hydrogen, well, it's interesting. Not helium. Helium is a noble gas. It doesn't combine with anything, so it's like a block you can't build anything with. But oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, all these things, we are comprised of the same things, of the most plentiful resource on the entire universe. So it makes no sense if we were the only ones, right? Even carbon, we are carbon-based because you can make more molecules of carbon than you can with every other element combined. It's an extraordinarily powerful molecule, which is why we're made of it. And it's also 5 times more common than another element like silicon, which is conceptually has some similarity to it. So are we around other aliens? Absolutely sure. I mean, if you were going to make the statement, if you can make the reverse statement, so I'm going to go a little tangent here, but if you're going to make the reverse statement that we are the only thing in the universe, then you have to come up with a reason of what infinitesimally small thing that happened to us on this little a pale blue dot, as Carl Sagan once called it. And that's a hard idea. Like nobody has actually yet come up with an idea of how that was feasible, especially when you consider that like there are more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand on the entire planet Earth. So it would have to be so rare that you have to win the lottery every day for a few years sequentially. That's how like rare it would be that we survive and we are the ones that exist and nobody else exists in the entire universe. I have a hard time believing that. It makes much more logical sense that the most abundant resource created more of us, more like carbon-based life forms than this infinitesimally small thing we're talking about, where this one little pale blue dot got something for some reason. It makes no sense to me.
I think that may be one of the best answers we've ever had. That was awesome.
I'm sorry if I went a little bit of a science rant there. I'm a little bit of a nerd, might be able to tell. But
what one question do you have for me to wrap us up?
My question for you is like, what are your feelings on tribalism? Like people are, you have some, Bitcoin maxis, ETH maxis, even Rune maxis. Like, how do you feel? Is this a good thing for the space? Is it a bad thing for the space? Are we heading in the right direction or the wrong direction? Like, how do you feel about that?
I don't think the world's binary. So I don't think that it's all good or all bad. I actually think the truth's somewhere in between. When you think about the good sides of it, there's definitely, like kind of like the hardcore Bitcoin argument would be like, oh, it's the immune system, right? It's the people who don't take anyone else's shit and they kind of, really adhere to truth and kind of keep people focused and all of that. So there's definitely truth in that. The bad side is you can turn away people who may actually be, genuine actors and interested. And I always say that you can be a maximalist without being an asshole as well, right? like that is a possible thing.
Wait. What did you say?
and that is across the spectrum, right? I think that like every single community, every single tribe has extremes to it. And also people who are more centrist, right? It's basically just like politics, right? Yeah. You can have multiple political parties, and then you'll have the extremists in every political party, and then you'll have people who are more centrist in those political parties.
Sure.
And so I think that we all have to realize that, like, in many cases, we all actually have the same goal or the same finish line in mind. It's simply that the path to get there, sometimes there's disagreement, and sometimes it's actually just people want to work on different things, they're interested in different things, and that's all okay.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. It's a great answer.
Yeah. Where can we send people to find you on the internet or find more about Thorchain?
Well, don't find me. I'm not that important. But you can find Thorchain at Thorchain. There's lots of people you can follow within the community, like Bitcoin Sage and Miho Brains and all these great people that are in this community. You can go ahead and follow them. Don't follow me. I'm useless.
Is there a website where people can go as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thorchain.org is one of our sites. You can check it out, read the docs. There's some great explainers on Rebase as well if you want to get to the nitty gritty of it all. It is a very complicated system. It does take a while to learn. Just as it takes a while to learn Bitcoin in its true form, at least. So I encourage people to look and to read and to understand. The more you read about it, the more you realize there's something really significantly happening here.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, listen, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It's very cool to see people adopting something that you guys have built. So we'll have to do it again in the future.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.